Picture two hunters. Same tribe. Same forest. Same night. One of them sleeps deeply. Body relaxed, breathing slow, completely out. The other one wakes up every time a branch snaps. Every rustle in the dark. Every sound that doesn't quite fit the pattern. Which one survives longer? Think about that before you answer, because your instinct might be wrong. For most of human history, roughly 300,000 years of it, anxiety wasn't something people went to therapy to fix. It was something that kept them alive. And then, in an eye blink of evolutionary time, the world changed. The threats went abstract. The predators disappeared. But the system didn't. Let's start with what that system actually does. You're in a forest. No electricity, no walls. No lock on a door. The only light is fire. And fire has a radius. Beyond that radius, nothing. Complete dark. You can't see your own hand. Every night, your group falls asleep in that darkness, trusting that nothing will come out of it. Most people sleep. But one person doesn't. Not fully. He's the one who wakes up when the forest goes quiet, because he's learned that silence is sometimes more dangerous than noise. He's the one who noticed, 3 seasons ago, that the wolves moved differently before they attacked. He's the one who can't turn his brain off. For the last 200 years, we've been calling that person anxious. For the previous 298,000 years, we called him the reason everyone else woke up in the morning. Here's what anxiety actually is, stripped of all the clinical language. Your brain is a prediction machine. It takes in information, builds a model of the world, and constantly asks, does what I'm sensing match what I expect? When the answer is yes, you're calm. When the answer is no, alarm. Heart rate up. Muscles tight. Attention narrowed to a single point. The system is fast because it had to be. By the time you consciously registered that thing in the grass is a lion, you needed to already be moving. The brain that could process threat before it became obvious was the brain that survived. But here's the part that matters. The system doesn't run on certainty. It runs on possibility. It doesn't wait for proof. It fires on suspicion. Which means the people with the most sensitive alarm systems were also the people most likely to survive false alarms, and false alarms are cheap. Missing a real one isn't. So natural selection, generation after generation, kept selecting for the people who couldn't quite relax. You are, statistically, their descendant. If anxiety is so exhausting, so disruptive, so clearly painful, why didn't evolution just get rid of it? That's the question nobody stops to ask. Because if you think about it, it's genuinely strange. Thousands of years of human history, billions of people, and this trait, this tendency to worry, to anticipate disaster, to lie awake running through scenarios, never disappeared. It got passed down. Over and over. Across every culture, every continent, every era. That doesn't happen by accident. In 2008, evolutionary psychologist Marco Del Giudice, working out at the University of Turin, published research on something he called developmental calibration. The idea that the nervous system isn't fixed at birth. It reads the environment during early childhood and adjusts its sensitivity accordingly. Grow up somewhere unpredictable, somewhere dangerous, somewhere where resources could vanish without warning, and your nervous system learns to stay alert. Not because something went wrong, because the environment was sending accurate information, and your brain was listening. The anxious child in a dangerous world isn't broken. He's calibrated. But here's where it gets complicated. The nervous system that got calibrated 40,000 years ago is, in all its essential architecture, the same nervous system you're running right now. Agriculture is 12,000 years old. Writing is under 6,000. The internet is 30. Your threat detection system is 300,000. So what happens when you drop a system built to detect lions into an environment where the threats are abstract, a performance review, a credit card balance, a text that went unanswered for 3 hours? The system fires anyway, and then it fires again, and again, because it never gets the signal it was built to receive, the signal that says, resolved. In the ancient world, you either fought or fled. The confrontation ended. Cortisol dropped. The thread was closed. A passive-aggressive email at 11 p.m. doesn't close. An argument that happened 6 months ago doesn't close. A fear about what someone thinks of you doesn't close. The alarm rings. And rings. And rings. Into an empty room. That's not a malfunction. That's a system optimized for a world that no longer exists, running in a world it was never designed for. So back to the original question. What did people with hyperactive alarm systems actually do before the modern world gave them nowhere to put it? They had a job. In hunter-gatherer groups, the most vigilant members weren't a burden. They were infrastructure. They were the ones who woke before dawn, who stayed awake after the fire dimmed, who noticed that the animals at the watering hole were behaving differently, that a member of the group had been acting off for 3 days, that the pattern of the season was shifting earlier than expected. Their anxiety had an address. And research on memory adds another layer to this. Elizabeth Phelps, a neuroscientist at NYU, spent years studying how emotional arousal affects memory consolidation. The core finding: fear makes memories stick. High-stress experiences are encoded with more detail, more precision, more durability than neutral ones. Which means the anxious person in a hunter-gatherer band was probably also the one who remembered exactly where the lion had appeared 2 seasons ago. Which stretch of the river ran dangerous in spring. Which stranger had shown up in camp the week before a crisis. They weren't just sentinels. They were the group's memory. The most anxious person in your family tree might be the exact reason you exist today. Let that sit for a second. Not in spite of the anxiety. Because of it. That there's something else. Something that almost never comes up in conversations about mental health or evolutionary psychology. Anxious people in ancient environments were never alone with their anxiety. They existed inside a structure that absorbed it. Small groups meant that fear was communal. When one person was on alert, everyone knew. The response was collective. And this is the part that modern life has almost entirely erased. There were rituals of resolution. The hunter returned. The fire was lit. The story of what happened was told out loud, to people who were physically present, who could touch you. The nervous system completed its cycle. There was no anxiety at 3 a.m. in a dark room, alone, scrolling through your own thoughts with nowhere for them to go. There was someone awake on the other side of the fire. There was one more thing the ancient world had that ours doesn't: edges. Dark meant the day was over. Cold meant the season had shifted. The fire's radius was the boundary of the safe world. Time had a shape. The body knew where it was. Today, time is continuous. There's no real darkness. The workday ends, but the notifications don't. The week finishes, but the dread about next week starts before Sunday's over. The alarm system was designed for an environment with clear boundaries. Ours has none. It's like installing a smoke detector in a room where someone's running a grill indoors. The detector is working perfectly. The problem is the room. Here's the paradox that's worth sitting with. The traits we now diagnose: hypervigilance, difficulty powering down, rumination, acute sensitivity to shifts in the social environment. These were probably the traits most responsible for human survival in conditions we can barely imagine today. The person who couldn't relax was, in many contexts, the person who kept everyone else alive. And then the world reorganized itself, faster than any evolutionary process could track. And that same system became a source of suffering. Not because it broke. Because the environment it was built for no longer exists. The question that no single study will answer is this: what do you do with a system that still works, but is responding to the wrong world? Ancient anxious people had a structure around them, a group, a rhythm, a ritual, a place to put the fear. They didn't choose to be vigilant, but they lived in a world that knew what to do with them. The world we live in doesn't. And maybe the real question isn't how to get rid of the anxiety. Maybe it's how to deliberately rebuild what used to exist by necessity. The fire on the other side of the room, the rhythm that closes the day, the group that shares the weight of watching. The most anxious people in human history didn't survive despite their fear. They survived because of it. And because there was a world structured enough to hold it. That world had to be built then. It still does now. If any part of this video felt uncomfortably familiar, not the disorder part, but the vigilance part, the memory, The system that won't turn off. Leave it in the comments. What in your life functions as the fire on the other side of the room?